Hello my friends, Assalamu alaikum. This is the continuation of the second segment. In this segment, we will be addressing the response given by ChatGPT. So, here is the response. ChatGPT stated the following. The concept of nuzul, that is, the initial feast, in the third phase of Judgment Day, as outlined in your text, is drawn from various Quranic verses. Here is an analysis of how well the conclusions align with the verses provided along with my thoughts. Number 1. The concept of nuzul, Quranic verses. In chapter 41, verses 30 to 32, describe nuzul as the initial reward given to the believers after their faith and perseverance. The angels will descend upon them and bring them the good news of paradise, where they will receive whatever they desire, and it is called an initial feast from the most forgiving, the very merciful. Verse 198 of chapter 3 confirms the reward for the righteous as an initial feast from Allah in the form of gardens beneath which rivers flow. Verses 18 and 19 of chapter 32 contrast the state of the believers and the sinners, with the believers receiving gardens as an initial feast for what they used to do, indicating that the term nuzul refers to the initial pleasures and blessings they will enjoy. Verse 102 of chapter 18, verses 47 to 56 of chapter 56, and verses 106 to 108 of chapter 11 describe the punishment for disbelievers, where their nuzul is hellfire, in contrast to the believers' rewards. Your conclusion. You have described nuzul as the initial phase of physical reward for the righteous in paradise and punishment for the disbelievers in hell, which is consistent with the Quranic verses. The differentiation between the physical and spiritual rewards is also aligned with the texts that describe gardens, rivers, and material pleasures in contrast to the punishments for disbelievers. The idea that this feast represents a temporary or introductory stage, after which greater rewards or consequences will follow, is also in line with the usage of nuzul in these verses. My opinion. This conclusion is correct and reflects the Quranic message accurately. Nuzul as an initial feast, whether it refers to rewards in paradise or punishment in hell, is clearly supported by these verses. Point number 2. The seven heavens and earths. Quranic verses. Verse 12 of chapter 65 mentions 7 heavens and 7 earths, and that Allah's command descends between them. This suggests a complex, multi-layered universe with divine decrees affecting all realms. Your conclusion. The idea of 7 units, that is, heavens and earths, where life is possible in only one, that is, the nearest heaven, our observable universe, and the rest reserved for reward and punishment, is a broader interpretation of this verse. Your division of the realms into paradises and hells, specifically allocated for humans and jinns, appears to expand on this concept, though the verse itself does not directly mention the details of how these realms are assigned. My opinion. The description of 7 heavens and earths is Quranic, but the specific allocation of paradises and hells in these realms, as you mentioned, seems more speculative or derived from Islamic traditions outside the Quran. While plausible, it's not directly explained in Quran chapter 65 verse 12. Point number 3. Intercession and purification in hell. Quranic verses. In verse 128 of chapter 6 and verse 87 of chapter 19, it is suggested that intercession is possible, but only for those who have taken a covenant with Allah. Verse 38 of chapter 74 and verse 21 of chapter 52 describe each individual being accountable for their own deeds, reinforcing that one's fate is tied to their actions. However, verse 87 of chapter 19 does suggest the possibility of intercession for those with a divine promise. Verse 48 of chapter 4 emphasizes that the sin of polytheism, that is shirk, is unforgivable unless repented, which aligns with your claim that polytheists cannot be purified until the universe's annihilation. Your conclusion. You state that purification of those in hell is possible based on their sins, with eventual transfer to paradise after purification, and that intercession will be granted to those with whom Allah has made a promise. This is in line with the verses that allow for intercession under certain conditions and suggest that people will be responsible for their own deeds. My opinion. Your conclusion is consistent with Quranic teachings. The notion of intercession and purification aligns with the verses, particularly for believers who have some connection to divine mercy or promises, while the unforgivable nature of polytheism is also supported by verse 48 of chapter 4 of Quran. Point number 4. Duration of reward and punishment. Quranic verses. Verses 106 to 108 of chapter 11 indicate that the punishment for the disbelievers and the reward for the righteous will last as long as the heavens and earth endure, with the caveat that Allah's will is the final determinant in both cases. This implies that while eternal, the specifics of duration are ultimately known only to Allah. Your conclusion. You mention that the duration of Judgment Day continues and that people may be moved from hell to paradise based on their purification. The polytheists, however, will not be purified until the end, indicating an extended duration in hell. My opinion. Your explanation is in harmony with the verses, which emphasize the eternal nature of these consequences, but also allow for Allah's will to determine when and if changes occur, such as purification or release from hell. Point number 5. Final thoughts. Overall, your conclusions about the third phase of judgment, that is Nuzul, are well grounded in the Quranic verses provided. The concept of Nuzul as an initial stage of reward and punishment, the division of realms, the role of intercession, and the process of purification all have a basis in these verses, though certain interpretations, like the specific allocation of the 7 heavens and earths for different groups, extend beyond the literal Quranic text and may reflect broader Islamic teachings. In summary, the idea of Nuzul as an initial feast for both the righteous and sinners, the eternal nature of paradise and hell, and the possibility of intercession seem correct. The detailed allocation of heavens and earths for humans and jinns, though not contradicted by the Quran, is not explicitly mentioned in the verses analyzed, and therefore I would term them as speculative or expanded. Finally, your analysis reflects a strong understanding of the Quranic themes, and your conclusions are largely sound. My friends, with this, ChatGPT's response finishes. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum.